Hey, it's Entheogen, and I'm going to show you today in this video how to make thumbnails for your YouTube videos, for your Let's Play videos. Thumbnails are a very important part of your sort of promotion of your videos. So today I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to give an example of that. We're going to be using the program Photoshop to create a thumbnail for the game The Last Express, which I haven't yet recorded, but I'm planning on doing it in the future. It's an adventure game set on the Orient Express, so I thought it'd be a good, pretty simple thumbnail to show you how I do it, at least. So you're going to need, basically, I've got Google Chrome open, because we need to refer to the internet for some stuff. And then I've also got here in my Let's Play folder open. You'll notice I have a bunch of different files here. I've got stuff for the sound for my Let's Play videos. I've got something for the video for my Let's Play videos. I've got something for, I use Power Director for editing videos. So I've got a Power Director projects. We want to go to the images folder. I've got channel headers and thumbnails. I want to go to thumbnails. You notice I have several different files here. The one I want here is a pre-made template that I've made in Photoshop. It's called YouTube Thumbnail Template. So let's go ahead and open that guy up. Okay, so it's going to open up Photoshop. And this is just an empty Photoshop canvas, which is the exact dimensions that they recommend in YouTube for your YouTube thumbnails. Then that is 1280 pixels wide by 720 pixels tall. Okay, so that's going to be what our final thumbnail is going to be. The dimensions of that is going to be. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get some, I use stock imagery for a lot of what I do in my thumbnails. So for that, your best friend is going to be Wikimedia Commons, right? So that's going to give you a lot of freely usable media, right, for your thumbnails and so forth. This game is called The Last Express. Like I said, it's an adventure game set on the Orient Express. So I wanted some pictures of trains. So I actually want a steam locomotive. So I'm going to type that into pictures into Wikimedia Commons search, and it gives me all of these categories. I ended up picking steam locomotives by country, and since the Orient Express begins in technically it begins in Victoria Station in England, but I looked for steam locomotives of France because Paris is one of the most common places it gets on there. And then I looked at steam locomotives of the Compagnie des Chemins de Fer du Nord, and this was the final image here. This one right down here, sort of the middle row, second from the right, was the final image that I decided I wanted to use for my picture. I've already cut and paste. I've already saved that to my hard drive. So this is going to be what we're going to use for our thumbnail. So if you go to Photoshop and you go to Open, oops, those are for Game Dev Tycoon. Ignore those. Go to Samples, what I've saved there, and I've got it already saved in my samples. It's going to open it. If you do any pictures that are PNG pictures that have no background, they have a clear background, make sure that you open them, you save them to your hard drive, and then open them in Photoshop in order to copy them onto your canvas, rather than simply copying the image from Google Chrome or Firefox or Internet Explorer or whatever it is you use. Because if you just copy it out of Google Chrome or whatever web browser you use, it's going to show up all the transparent areas are going to be black. Right? You don't want that to happen. You want them to be transparent. So if you save the image to your hard drive, then open it in Photoshop the way I just opened this image, and then copy and paste inside Photoshop into your canvas, then you'll won't lose that transparency. So go ahead and click on the square selection tool and select all. There's a two-step process to copying things in Photoshop. First, you have to select it, then click on the arrow key, which is the move tool. Click on it, and that will be selected. Then I'm going to go to Edit, Copy. All right, so we've copied that. I'm going to close this. I don't need this image anymore, so I can go ahead and close it. I haven't made any changes to it, so it's not going to ask me to save. And I've got my blank canvas. Now I'm going to paste the image in there, right? So there's my image, right? It's not quite big enough to fill the canvas. Obviously, it's too small. I'm clicking and dragging and moving it around. So if I go ahead and I move my cursor over one of the corner little handles, it will turn into a diagonal extender cursor. Now if I just do that and stretch it out, it will distort the picture. You'll notice that the outline of the picture now turns into a solid square rather than being the dashed square. That means that the thing's been altered. It won't let me do anything else until I accept that alteration. I don't want to distort it, so if I go ahead and click on the Move button, it'll ask me if I want to apply the transformation. I don't want to apply it, so I'm going to hit Don't Apply, and it'll go back to normal. Okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Shift before I start stretching it. That'll keep the proportions the same, so the picture won't be distorted. I can stretch it out so it's big enough to fit into my image here. Go ahead and apply it, and it'll smooth it out. Right? So you can move it around a little bit and figure out how exactly you want it to be in there. I like that. That's pretty good. So now what you're going to do is you've done it like that. I like the black and white, but I'd like it to be a little more sepia toned. Look a little, I mean, because it's a black and white photo, but I'd like it to look more black and white, I guess is the best way to put it. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my image, my image tab here on my toolbar. If I go to adjustments, right, it gives me the number of options: black and white, hue, saturation, desaturate. If you go to hue and saturation, right, you can change the colors of the hue and saturation. We don't want that one though. What we want to do is we want to go to adjustments, right? We want to go to color balance is what we want. We want to make it slightly more yellow than it is. It's going to be difficult. It's already black and white. There's not a lot of yellow in it. But if you go ahead and you move, you have 3 sliders here. Cyan on one end, magenta, yellow, red, green, blue on the other end. Moving these sliders will adjust the image, right? So for example, if I take the red one and go towards the red end, the picture will appear more red, right? If I move towards the green, it'll appear more green, just as you're seeing in the background there. You'll also notice down here you have 3 options: tone, balance, midtones, shadows, and highlights. Let's go ahead and set all these guys back to 0. So we're back in the middle again. So that's the original picture. If I do just the shadows, only the dark areas will be affected by this, so that it'll get darker in the red bits, right? Whereas if I do the highlights, the light bits will get darker, will get redder. See? Like that. So you notice that there's a significant difference in that. We want this to be kind of a brownish color, and brown is going to be a mixture of red and yellow. And we want to do mostly the midtones, I think. So go ahead and make it a little redder, not a lot. That's pretty good. And make it a little yellower. There we go. See, that looks pretty sepia, doesn't it? That looks pretty good. I like that color. That looks good. Okay. So now we want to include our title and so forth. So we're going to go in here and I've clicked on the T in Photoshop, which is the horizontal type tool. You can adjust to, if you want to do it vertically, click and hold and it'll allow you to do a vertical type tool. And we just want to do the regular horizontal type tool, I think, for now. I'm going to make a box. Okay, up here on your toolbar, now you have a bunch of options, including the font, what style of font, how big it's going to be, whether it's going to be sharp or crisp or smooth or whatever, what color it's going to be. We have a very large font right now. I'm going to move this down to about 72 pixels because otherwise we won't be able to see it on the screen. And I'm just going to type in Entheogen Plays. That's going to be like the main part of the title. And I don't like that font for this. It's kind of anachronistic. So let's go ahead and pick your font. Now, as you'll notice, if I go here, I have a ton of fonts here. Where did I get all these fonts, you might ask? Well, there's a wonderful website, which I'm going to click on my Google Chrome here, wonderful website called dafont.com. And you'll notice that it's got all of these different types of fonts. Here's some recently added fonts they've got here. You can do things like you can do cartoon fonts, comic fonts, groovy fonts. These are the fancy fonts. You can do fonts in different foreign styles. For example, let's say you want to do some Russian fonts. You click on the Russian tab and it'll bring up a bunch of Russian fonts. As you can see, different stuff here. You can do Gothic fonts if you do want to do like medieval Gothic stuff. And then you'll notice over here on the right side it tells you exactly the terms of use. So in this case, this old London font is 100% free. You can use it for whatever you want. Then you just click download and you download it. It's a great site for finding fonts, all kinds of different fonts. I use it all the time. I've already installed the font that I want to use. So I'm going to scroll down here. You'll notice I've got lots of different types, different styles for all different purposes. The fonts that I decided to use was something called, where is it? Victorian Parlor Vintage. All right, which looks like that. All right, so let me click off here. You'll notice it's kind of difficult to read because it's small and it's thin. We're going to increase the size. Let's go ahead and see if we've got the other one. There's two varieties. I think this one might be thicker. No, it's the same. All right, so you'll notice that the font that I've got here results in the text only taking up a small portion of this selected area for the type. I don't want to use that size because that's going to affect how when I play with the size of the font. So I can shrink this without changing the size of the font. Oops, too much. It's like that. I've got it centered, incidentally. I've got the font centered in the box by clicking this justification up here, which will ensure that it's always in the middle of the box, which is where I want it. So if I go ahead and click the Move tool, now I can move it wherever I want. So see, that's what the font looks like there. That's too small, though, so let's make it bigger. So again, Shift to maintain the proportions. Now I can click and drag and increase the size of the font. Okay. All right, so there's that. So you see that's much bigger now. Hang on, I had to have a drink of water there. But it doesn't say anything about the last express on here. So that's we want people to know what game we're playing. So let's go ahead and click on our Google Chrome. And let's go to Google. And we're gonna search for the last express logo. Let's see if it comes up. If it gives me anything. So yeah, so here's some images. All right, so let's go. This looks like the best one. It's the French Wikipedia. Let's go ahead and grab that one. Okay, so we can go ahead and view the image. So again, we're going to save this image into the samples file that I had before. Go ahead and save it. Then we can go ahead and open it in Photoshop. Here it is. Go ahead and open that guy. Again, select everything using the square selection tool. Move, and then edit, copy. You can do Control-C as well. Control-C will work. Go ahead and paste it in. But you'll notice now it's surrounded by this black block of stuff. We don't want that in there. That's not good. So let's go ahead and zoom in on it by clicking on the little magnifying glass and then the plus sign. If I click on it, it will increase the size. Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to select my little magic eraser tool. You have a couple of different tools you can use. You have the magic eraser, you can use the background eraser, or you can just use the plain old eraser. We're actually going to select the background eraser. I've got an enormous brush size because I don't want to have to think about, I don't want to wave it around. And I've set it at discontiguous. That means it'll pick up all of the colors that I select, right? Even if they're not joined together. And I've got it about 21% tolerance. Now, how does the background eraser work? Basically, is when you click on something, you're going to select that color to erase. Right, so if I were to click on this white stuff here, you can't see, the cursor is not very easily seeable, but if I were to click on the white stuff in the last express, it would erase the white stuff. So let me demonstrate that. So see, it just erased all that white in there. I'm going to do Edit, Undo, so because we want to keep that. We want to erase the black. So we're actually going to zoom out a little bit so I can see the whole thing there. Okay, go back to my background eraser and then do the black. Okay, so why is it not erasing it? Here. Hang on, zoom in. Zoom in, zoom in. Okay, so go ahead and grab my background eraser. Should erase it. All right. Because the problem here is it's protecting the foreground color. So if you have this option of protecting the foreground color, that's an color I've already selected, which is black. We don't want to do that. So go ahead and change the foreground color. We're going to change it to white. So just you go ahead and click on the foreground color. Let me show you how to do that again. So the foreground color is down here. So there's two little black squares. The black square in the front is the foreground color. Click on it. This will bring the color picker up. We're just going to click. You can basically pick any color. We just want it to be white. Okay, so we're back on the background eraser. Go ahead and click on this, and you see that it's deleted it all, right? It hasn't done it perfectly. There's a little bit of chop around the edges of this stuff. So I'm going to edit, undo the background eraser. I'm going to increase the tolerance. Let's make it 30%. So hopefully that'll get rid of some of that chop. I got rid of a little of it. Okay, and then I don't want this Le Dernier Express down here. That's in French. So go ahead and grab your square selection tool. Select the area that's got that down there. And I'm just going to delete it. Just hit delete. Okay. So there's that. So now we can go ahead and zoom out. So now we've got the Last Express logo by itself. Oops. Okay. So we can move it around and put it anywhere, but it's kind of small, you noticed. We want to make it bigger so it will fit on the screen here. It will be readable. So go ahead and expand the size. There. Apply the transformation. Go ahead and apply it. Okay, so there's that. So we want to keep it down towards the bottom so the train's pretty visible. Let's take a look at Entheogen Plays and put where we want it to be. Okay, so that's pretty good. I like where that stuff is. You'll notice that I haven't talked about this at all yet. In a second yet. Here is that Photoshop uses, as opposed to something like Paint, Photoshop uses layers. Every single one of these picture elements is on a different layer, which is located over here on the right in these different layer selections, right? And the one that's currently selected is Entheogen Plays. If I were to select layer 2, that would select the Last Express. Layer 1 is the background picture of the train, and the background layer is just the background layer. So each of those layers you can move around with and play with, and it's great because it means that you can move them around in relationship to each other or affect an individual layer without having to worry about affecting all the other layers. That's really a great tool, a wonderful tool that Photoshop has that something like Paint or any other bitmap editor simply doesn't have. The reason I bring that up is because we want to affect just this Last Express layer, because as I pointed out before, when we erase the background, there's a lot of chop around the edges. It's kind of looking kind of pixelated. Well, there's something we can do, right, to make that chop disappear, or at least reduced. If we go to where it says Layer, up here in the top selection bar, go to Layer, we can go to what's called Layer Styles. All right, that gives you a number of options. You have a drop shadow, an inner shadow, an outer glow. Let me show you what each of those do. Putting a drop shadow on it results in it having a little shadow around it, like you'd see, like, oh, the letters stand out. What we want to do is you could do a drop shadow if you wanted to. Let's take a look at some of our different options. The inner shadow, on the other hand, take the drop shadow off, it disappears. See, there it is, there it is. The inner shadow, on the other hand, puts the shadow inside the frame, so it makes it look like it's kind of embossed. And I like that. That looks pretty good, but I'm going to show you some of the other stuff too. You can do an outer glow, right, which causes it to glow like that. An inner glow, which is the same as the inner shadow. You can make it a bevel or emboss, which actually makes it look like it's kind of chiseled in there. And then again, there's a bunch of different options. Clicking on each of these options allows you to adjust these options. For example, this we've got right now, we're using an inner bevel. If we were to do an outer bevel, it would look like it's kind of stamped on there. You could do a I'm gonna move this thing so we can see a little better. You could do an emboss. You could do a pillow emboss, which looks like it's kind of like you've chiseled the outline of it in there. Or you could do a stroke emboss like that. What we're going to do is I think we're going to do an inner shadow. I like the way that looks. So go ahead and click on the inner shadow one. You can change what direction the light is coming from, so the angle of the shadow. You can change the size of the shadow, so if we increase the distance, so you can see that it becomes larger. We're going to put it, I think, at 10. That's too much. 10 is too much. 7, no, that's also too much. 5. We'll do 5. We'll stay at 5. You can do choke, which is how much it's going to expand. That's fine, I think. And then the actual size of the shadow, we're going to keep it at 5 pixels, I think. So I like that. That looks pretty good, I think, in terms of the actual logo there. Now, this is basically your template for the thumbnail itself, the series of thumbnails. Let's take a look and see how it'll look to somebody who's actually looking on YouTube. To do that, we're going to use the resizer, the zoom tool. We're going to do the zoom out, and we're just going to zoom out, right? And that's about the size of most YouTube videos that you see, right? Is that legible? Yeah, kinda. I mean, they might be a little larger, right? That's definitely legible, right? They can tell it's the Last Express, right? They can see it's a train, so they can see all the elements. What I am going to do though is we're going to go to our layer 1, which is this train background picture. We have the option of changing the opacity, right? So what the opacity means is how well you can see through that layer to other layers beneath it. For example, if I were to change the level of the Last Express opacity, right now it's at 100%, so it's 100% opaque. If I were to change it to 50%, see, you can see right through it. It becomes sort of transparent. That's not what I want to do though. I want to change the opacity of the background layer just a little bit, so it looks a little faded out. All right, we'll set it at 80%. There we go. So that's 80%. So it looks a little faded out. I like that. That looks good. All right, the entheogen plays is going to stay the same, right? So that way it's a little more legible at a different distance. We're going to zoom in, and what we want to do is we kind of want to center all these things. So go ahead and click on the background layer. Select it over here from your layer selection tool. Then use Control. By pressing Control, you can select other individual layers so they're layered together. Right, so Control, and then we'll do the entheogen plays layer. Now if we go to and use our Move tool, you'll notice that there are some new buttons you can use. These buttons control the relationship between the two layers, the relationship of the two layers to each other. So for example, this first one is align the top edges of the layer. Then we can align the vertical centers, align the bottom edges. This is why I was saying it's important to kind of make sure that your the text box is pretty tight around the actual text. Because for example, if the bottom of the text box, let's say you've got entheogen plays just by itself, you'll notice here's where the bottom of the text box is, right along here. If that box, the bottom of the text box were way down here, when you went to align the bottom layers, if that's what you decided to do, that's where it would be aligned at, not right below the actual words, but way down here. So we're going to pick this, we're going to do Control. I want to align their horizontal centers because I want them to be centered. Right, so that's a little more centered there, right? It doesn't look very centered. You may fiddle around. If you don't feel it looks very centered, you can certainly fiddle around with it until you feel it looks appropriately centered. Because we've got these little curly cues on the top here, right, that make it appear less centered. So yes, I am actually going to move this over a little bit because I don't feel it looks very centered with that. But it's always a good idea to get an idea of where it says it's supposed to be centered. So we're going to click Layer 2, which is our Last Express layer here, and then the background layer again and again. Align their middle points. So yeah, so that's where it is now. We can still see the train. We got the entheogen plays. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to file and I'm going to save as, all right, Last Express template. Okay, save it. All right, it's going to ask you how I want to maximize compatibility. Yeah, that's fine. So this way I've got a template. Now the issue becomes how do we distinguish each individual thumbnail from the other ones in the series? We want to have numbers, right? So I usually put an episode number. Oops, I don't want to do that. Hang on. All right, so go ahead and grab your text box, and we're going to make a number here. So just go ahead and drag the text box. It can be any size, basically. And we're going to be number 1, right? Or you could do number 0 if you want that to be the template. Go ahead and resize your text box so that it fits the number. 1 is usually the narrowest number, so it's maybe a little better to have it a little bigger. I don't like that font for the numbers. Let's go ahead and it's tiny, so let's go ahead and make it bigger. Right? It's not this font doesn't stand out very well. I've made it bigger. We can go ahead and use a text tool to select it. That font doesn't stand out very well, so I'm going to pick another font. And you can do that. You can use multiple different fonts inside your thumbnails. So going all the way up to the top, there was one that I had. Where was that one? I want kind of an old-timey font looking one. Here's one called Cast Iron. That looks pretty good, I think. Let's go ahead and take a look at it without the stuff on it. It's not very legible, though, is the problem, because of the background elements. So maybe for some other project where it's got a solid background, that would look well, but I don't think it looks very good in this. The background elements just make it look odd. One thing we could do is we can change the background quality, right? We can do, if we go to our layer properties, layer style, and do an outer glow around it. I usually like to use a white glow, which is 6 Fs if you use the hexadecimal system. All right, and we can make it a little bigger. So let's do 14 spread and then 43 size. That'll make it really big. Okay, so this is what it would look like. So the question that you have to ask yourself is that legible? And the question is where do we want to put it on the frame? I still don't think it's very legible. It looks okay, I guess. But I still don't like it very much. So let's go ahead and pick something else. And let's go through our list of fonts here. And we got, like I said, I have a lot, so this may take a minute for me to figure out which font I want to use. But again, having a large number of fonts gives you a very wide variety of options for doing this stuff. And the nice thing about Photoshop is it will generate samples of what each font looks like. So even if you don't remember exactly what a font is called, you can go back and say, oh, that's the font that I want to use. Let's take a look here. So there's one called Outstanding, which kind of looks like the fonts on the dollar bills. It's really big, so you'll notice that the one has disappeared. It's too big for our box. So there it is. Let's go ahead and bring it over here. Or is it still too big? Oh, darn it. All right, let's go ahead and delete this layer. Delete layer. Yeah. Okay, so go ahead and get the one. Where is it? All right. Okay, so the problem here is that we can't even see it. It's too big, apparently. It's massive. I should be able to see it by now, which is really irritating. Or it's possible. Well, usually if they don't have it in there, they don't. If they don't have the option of using numbers, they'll give you a little box instead of a number. So I'm just going to delete this layer and we'll start over again. All right, so let's go ahead and do one. And so we didn't like that one. It didn't work. It was called sample something or other. Or what was it called again? What was that guy called? Oh, here, Outstanding. So it was too big for that. Let's see what else we got. Something else that looks good. Oh, Romantiques or Rosewood Standard. Either of these might look good. Yeah, I like that one. That looks pretty good. That looks kind of like the other one, but it looks a little more solid. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. So I've decreased the size of my box down to it's basically around the 1. And then we're going to stretch it out so it's big. About that big, I think is probably good. So how does that look? And then we'll apply a outer glow to it to make it stand out. Again, I want to do white. You can do any number of colors you want. Just remember that darker colors are not going to show up as well as outer glows. Okay, there's that. So what do you think? I think that looks pretty good. I think that one looks pretty good. The other one was the Rosewood Standard, which might look pretty good. Let's try that. Rosewood Standard was right here. I don't like that one as much. And then there was one called Showboat, I think, which was also... See, it made a little square, which means it doesn't have numbers available to us. Any others we might want to try? Let's see, I'm just taking a look here. Yeah, I don't see any others that I particularly like. I do like that. I did like that Romantiques one, kinda. So it looks kind of like Victorian era one. So we'll go ahead and we'll do that. And again, I want to change the size of the text box because it was adjusted. Now you notice we got a flashing cursor here. If you decrease the text box in Photoshop so it's shorter than the cursor is, you won't be able to increase the size of the thing diagonally. Right, let me show you how that works. So I can decrease that, oops, like that. You'll notice now the cursor is outside. If I click on this and try to do it like that, oh, I guess it's letting me do it now. It's being a irritating poop. But a lot of times it will not allow you to do that. So there's my 1. Right, that's a little big, but I don't want to do that. I want to shrink it. Okay, apply it. So yes, there's my one. So the question is, where do I want to put it in the thing? I don't want to put it right here in the middle because that blocks out the train. But I might do slightly off to the side. Or you could do it down here in a corner, right? If you move the Last Express title slightly over. You could do it in this corner. So let's try that. Let's see how that looks. Layer 2. Move this guy over a little bit. And then we do this layer 1. We can put this guy down here. It kind of crowds it, doesn't it? Looks like it's crowding it. I could shrink the Last Express, but I don't want to do that because otherwise it won't be legible. So let's go ahead and center this guy again by grabbing the background, centering the horizontal centers. Then we'll go to layer 1, this 1 layer. I think I want to put it, let's put it, maybe, the other option is I could put it here. Again, I honestly don't like that font. I don't like these hollow fonts. So let's go ahead and change that font. I don't like it. I've decided now that I simply don't like it. And the nice thing, like I said, is that you can decide to change it if you want. So let's do just a really simple, straightforward font for that. How about like a copperplate Gothic bold? It's going to be bigger. Yeah, that's a pretty straightforward font. There we see what it looks like. Just a 1, right? That's pretty good. And see, that'll fit here in the corner. So we could put that in the corner, right? And then we could move the Entheogen place over a little bit, like this, right? So the 1's in the corner, and you want to kind of have the margins be about the same, right? The 1's in the corner. There's the train. There's Entheogen plays. There's the Last Express. This is a pretty good thumbnail right here, right? So let's go ahead and save this as the Last Express 1, because that's going to be our first one. Okay, go ahead and save it. All right, so now it's a Photoshop document. We want to have it be a PNG file so we can export to YouTube. So go up here to File. You're going to do Save As again in just a second here. I'll show you how to do it. First thing you want to do is you want to flatten the image. So go ahead and select the lowermost layer, your background layer. Right-click on it. Select Flatten Image. So now it's all one image. We can't adjust anything anymore. We can't move anything around. Do not overwrite your PSD, your Photoshop document at this point because you won't be able to alter it anymore. So then we're going to go to File, Save As. Now I want to change it from being a PSD type file, it's still going to be called Last Express 1, to a PNG file. Right, because that's going to be our final thing that we're going to upload to YouTube. So we go ahead and save it. We don't want to do any interlacing, so go ahead and hit OK. Okay. So we can go ahead and close all this Photoshop because we're done with that. Go to our thumbnails file here, and you'll notice that we now have a new image here where it says the Last Express. If we right-click on that, we can open it with Windows Photo Viewer, and this is what our final thumbnail is going to look like. Entheogen plays the Last Express, number 1, and then we would change this number depending on how many episodes we do. So if we do 10 episodes, you could just crank, if you record all your episodes at once, you can just crank out and say, okay, I did 10 episodes, let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that. And that's how you make a thumbnail. All right, so we can close out all this stuff. Anyway, so that was my explanation of how to make a thumbnail. It's pretty straightforward. You just have to have a pretty good idea of what you actually want to do for your thumbnail, what design you want to use. That's the starting point for that. I like to use a lot of images. You can use the art from the box of the game. You could use a screen cap from the game with your added on information. Whatever you decide to use. The sky is really the limit in terms of thumbnails. The important thing is it needs to be legible. So make sure that you're taking a good chance to step back, to shrink it down to a size where it's going to be about the size of a thumbnail on YouTube, and read it and say, okay, it's legible now. And the other thing is it shouldn't be too busy. A lot of thumbnails I see out there are too busy in the sense that they have too much stuff going on, too many different elements going on. You want to kind of keep it kind of simple, right? So you want to do something like your name, what game you're playing, and then what episode it is, right? So that people can easily just select, okay, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, right? Up to however many. The sky is the limit. And then if you have some sort of branding, like you have a logo or you have maybe a piece of artwork for yourself, you may want to include that in there as well. Just remember that your thumbnail ultimately needs to be legible. People are not going to click on thumbnails of things that they can't read. That's just the reality. If they don't know what the thumbnail is supposed to be about, they're not going to click on it. The idea of the thumbnail is it should catch your interest as the viewer, and if you don't do that, it's just not going to work. Alternatively, you could always put a picture of boobs on there. Apparently that works. I see a lot of those on the YouTubes. The YouTubes. I hope this tutorial has been kind of helpful for you. I hope you have any questions, you can just put them in the comments. I will see you next time. The next time I have a tutorial about how to make YouTube stuff.